Jack awoke with his body floating among fragments of twisted metal, as if he had been forgotten by the universe itself. The Erebus station orbited in absolute silence, broken only by the irregular crackling of red emergency lights. They flashed intermittently, casting long shadows that seemed to move even when nothing touched the air. The gravity system failed in cycles, causing the corridors to breathe in slow spasms. The station had been evacuated in a hurry. Torn panels, claw marks on the steel, and dark stains encrusted on the walls indicated that something had escaped human control. Jack moved forward cautiously, each movement amplified by the feeling of extreme isolation. The silence was not empty, it was dense, as if charged with expectation. As he descended to the lower levels, the environment changed. Industrial metal gave way to irregular, partially organic surfaces, pulsing under red lighting. Cables looked like veins. Doors had been sealed from the inside, deformed by a force that did not follow known laws. Log records projected fragmented data, references to a planet below, to an underground colony built as a last refuge after forgotten cosmic wars. Jack realized that the station was not just an outpost, but a filter. Something had been contained there for a while. Something that had learned to wait. Sensors detected movement in adjacent corridors, but no definite shapes appeared. Just the constant feeling of being watched by something too patient to attack. In the secondary control center, orbital maps revealed the planet beneath the station. A world marked by a permanent red sky and a single prominent structure. An ancient monolith, erected exactly above the deepest point of the underground colony. The data indicated that Erebus had been abandoned at the very moment unknown signals began to rise from the depths of the planet. When Jack stepped away from the panel, he noticed that the lights had stopped flickering erratically. Now they pulsed at a single, slow, almost organic rhythm. The walls vibrated softly, as if something very large had moved beneath the station. There was no alarm. There was no emergency. Just the silent confirmation that the station was still fulfilling its function, to observe. The escape pod remained functional. As Jack settled in, the station seemed to shrink around him, as if reluctant to let him go. In the helmet's visor, for a brief moment, reflections overlapped the image of the planet below, suggesting shapes that weren't there. When the thrusters were activated, Erebus was left behind, suspended in the void, awaiting the next observer. The descent began. And with it, the certainty that the real horror was not in the abandoned space, but in what had been buried beneath the surface of that red world. The capsule crossed the atmosphere in forced silence, enveloped by dense clouds tinged with red, as if the sky itself were on permanent alert. Jack watched the planet grow before him, a cracked, arid surface marked by deep scars that betrayed ancient exploitation and successive abandonment. There were no visible oceans, nor any signs of life on the surface. Everything seemed to have been pushed down. The landing took place a few kilometers from the monolith detected by the station. The structure stood alone, black and smooth, contrasting with the uneven terrain around it. It had no visible inscriptions, but emitted a constant, almost imperceptible vibration that passed through the ground and reached Jack's body through his suit. Instruments went haywire in front of him, unable to translate the signals emanating from that ancient form. The entrance to the underground colony was revealed behind the monolith, a monumental crevice that spiraled down into the depths of the planet. Jack began his descent via ancient platforms, illuminated by dim artificial lights, powered by systems that should never have survived for so long. The further he descended, the more the air changed, becoming heavy, laden with suspended luminescent particles. The city emerged like a vertical abyss. Gigantic structures projected downward, inverted skyscrapers connected by walkways, tunnels, and suspended rails. The architecture blended human technology with clearly alien elements, as if the colony had been expanded over generations that no longer distinguished their own origins. An artificial fog covered the lower levels, filtering the light into cold, unreal tones. Surveillance drones crisscrossed the upper levels, emitting beams of light that swept across narrow streets and alleys. Jack moved through the shadows, guided by faint energy signals. He found hastily abandoned living areas, marks of improvised barricades, and symbols painted on the walls, warnings about contaminated areas. The feeling was clear: the city had not been evacuated due to lack of resources, but out of fear. Further down, the first signs of infestation became visible. Metal surfaces were corroded by organic structures, resembling translucent fungi with glowing cores. Bioluminescent eyes opened and closed on the walls, following his every movement. They did not attack. They watched. The colony seemed aware of Jack's presence, but reacted with calculated curiosity. Data recovered from broken terminals indicated that these parasitic forms were not external invaders. They had been awakened. Ancient experiments mentioned the need to create an ecosystem capable of surviving near something described only as the core. The city was not a shelter from horror. It was a buffer. Upon reaching one of the central levels, Jack realized that the ambient sound had changed. A low, continuous noise echoed through the structures, similar to a deep, distant breath. The vibration came from even further below, from a region marked on the maps as a restricted zone. As he advanced, it became clear that the colony was not collapsing. It was on standby. And Jack had just entered the place where everything converged. The descent into the forbidden zone occurred without resistance, as if the colony itself had cleared the way. The structures became older and denser, compressing the space into narrow corridors and deep chambers. Artificial lighting was almost non-existent, replaced by irregular pulses coming from the walls, now completely assimilated by organic matter and melted circuits. Each of Jack's steps reverberated in invisible layers of the city. The laboratory appeared in the center of that level like a fossilized organ. Sealed doors had been broken from the inside out, and the interior revealed a scene of calculated abandonment. Broken androids remained attached to their supports, their open casings displaying hybrid components, synthetic flesh mixed with unknown metal alloys. Corrupted holograms were still active, projecting overlapping images of star maps, scanned human brains, and structures that did not belong to any stable geometry. Jack advanced among the remains of the experiments and noticed that the air seemed heavier there, laden with interference that affected his senses. Fragmented data appeared on the display, indicating attempts to map something that had no fixed form. Scientific records spoke of a presence detected in the depths of the planet, an entity that could not be destroyed, only contained and observed. The colony, the station, the parasites, everything had been designed as successive layers of containment. That was when the distortions began. Time seemed to oscillate subtly, making simple movements appear slightly delayed. Passing by a reflective surface, Jack noticed that his image did not follow his gestures accurately. The reflection took fractions of a second longer to react, as if it were learning to imitate him. As he moved forward, this difference became more evident. The helmet's display began to show contradictory readings. Duplicate heartbeats, neural signals that did not originate from his own body. The feeling of being alone slowly dissolved, replaced by a silent, attentive presence within. Jack realized that the laboratory had not failed. It had fulfilled its purpose for too long. At the core of the complex, a containment pit opened up to the deepest layers of the planet. It was not a physical abyss, but a zone where space seemed compressed, curved in on itself. The low noise heard on the upper levels came from there, now more intense, closer. The final records indicated that the entity needed a conscious observer to adjust its passage between realities. As he moved away from the pit, Jack saw his reflection finally move independently, aligning itself with the rhythm of that deep sound. There was no immediate threat, only confirmation that the colony had found the necessary intermediary. As the laboratory began to shut down its last systems, Jack headed toward the final level, carrying the certainty that he was no longer just an explorer. The entire city seemed to lead him down, to the point where the silence would be broken for good. The passage to the final level had no visible doors or mechanisms. The very structure of the colony receded as Jack advanced, as if recognizing his function at that point in the cycle. The walls pulsed at a slow, deep rhythm, synchronized with the sound that now filled everything, not as an external noise, but as an internal vibration, resonating within the body and mind. The space opened into a colossal chamber. In the center, suspended by unstable gravitational fields, burned a dying artificial sun. Its faint bluish light illuminated ruins that stretched beyond the field of vision, the remains of a megastructure built to contain the impossible. Gravity distorted in gentle waves, causing fragments of metal and organic matter to float like debris in an invisible ocean. Beneath the artificial sun, space seemed torn apart. A black hole contained by ancient technology spun slowly, warping light, time, and perception. From there emerged the entity that had shaped all that containment architecture. It had no fixed form. It was a colossal presence, made of folds in reality, tentacles of absence, and matter that did not obey known laws. It did not advance. It waited. Jack understood without words that the entity had not been imprisoned by force. It had been invited. Humanity, by exploring regions where consciousness preceded matter, had awakened something that could not be fought, only understood. The station, the underground colony, the parasites, and the laboratory were successive filters, designed to find a mind capable of sustaining the final contact. The artificial sun began to collapse, its light diminishing with each passing moment. With that, the entity expanded, not in size, but in influence. The city above trembled, entire layers of the colony collapsing in silence. Jack felt his memories reorganize, not erased, but rearranged like pieces of a larger system. He realized he had not been chosen by chance. His loneliness had always been the requirement. As he took his last step toward the core, the reflection in the visor stopped mimicking him. For the first time, it was perfectly aligned. There was no longer any separation between observer and observed. The black hole pulsed, and the space around it folded in on itself. The entity did not cross over into the universe. The universe was led to it. In the final moment, the underground colony ceased to exist as a physical structure, transforming into a concept, an invisible boundary imposed on reality. Jack did not disappear. He spread out. He became part of the mechanism that would keep the horror asleep, conscious, alert. A new observer had been integrated into the system. High above, under the red sky, the monolith remained motionless. The Erebus station resumed its silent cycles. The universe moved on, unaware of how close it had come to being rewritten. And somewhere beyond human perception, something learned to wait again. Share your opinion in the comments and tell us, what do you think about this horror story? And if you could travel through the universe, where would you like to start? If you liked this story and want to explore more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. The unknown still has much to teach us.